Hey guys, Gevorg here. I'm super excited to welcome Jonathan, who wrote the CFE 2019 and he was on the honor roll. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we start with your background? Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. I live in Melfort, Saskatchewan. I work at MNP. I'm a designated professional there, so I just got my letters a couple weeks ago. I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan at the Edwards School of Business in 2017 with high honors and great distinction there. And I actually wrote an honors thesis paper that's being published in the American Accounting Association Journal this February. So I was really excited to hear that news.
Congrats on achieving that. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. Why don't you tell us about the CFE prep schedule? For example, how many weeks did you take off and how many hours did you study?
For sure. I took off from Capstone, the start of Capstone 2 onwards. I took a couple weeks off before just to kind of relax and get ready, which I would highly recommend if you can, because that was really nice so that I found that after my little bit of time off, I was kind of ready to start doing something again. So then I could kind of get started right into studying full time. It was about 8 weeks off then in total. I studied every day, Monday to Friday, from 8 to 5, and I just took like a lunch in there. So I kind of treated it like it was my full-time job during that time. And
Makes
then
sense.
at 5 o'clock, I stopped studying. And I would just take the evening off and relax like I normally would if I was just working. So tried to maintain as much consistency as I could from working full-time to studying full-time for those 2 months.
I see. Can you tell us how you debrief your cases?
Yeah. So I really debriefed a lot. I would say compared to like some of my cohorts that were in at the same firm as me as when we wrote, I would say I debriefed the most. But I really valued that debrief time because I used that as a study period for myself. So instead of just looking at the solution and, oh, okay, I probably knew that, I would use my debrief time to really dive in to understand fully where the solution was coming from, what exact handbook references they were referring to, how they applied them, all that kind of stuff. So I really used the debrief time. Like when I was prepping, I was told that you should spend equal time as the case was to debrief,
Makes
and I
sense.
definitely did that. So if it was a 5 hour case, I spent at least 5 hours debriefing it. It
Okay.
was, but that was my main study resource. Like I never, on one of my days, like I never spent a whole day studying technical. Like most of my technical study was through debrief. So I would spend, if I had a 5 hour case, I would spend the whole next day debriefing that case. I had like tabs in the tracking sheet for each kind of the assessment opportunities. So management accounting, financial reporting, assurance, all 6 of them. And then every case I would type in what was tested, what you were supposed to do, and how I performed on it.
Okay, cool. And once you went through this process and you got to the CFE, was there anything that surprised you when you actually got to day one, day two, day three, or was it like you expected?
I think I found it to be exactly what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Day 2, we were warned ahead of time that there's going to be FR issues that you're not going to know about. So I wasn't surprised by them necessarily. Like I was surprised because I didn't know about them, but I wasn't surprised that there were ones that I hadn't studied yet. So knowing that going in, there was really nothing on there that was out of the normal or bizarre. I would say I found everything to be very, very expected in how the answer was going to be, or like how the questions were provided. How many assessment opportunities there are gonna be, all that kind of stuff.
I'm curious about your outlining techniques. If you could please tell us
Yeah,
if you use a computer outline or a paper outline.
for sure. Again, I did not know what to do on the first day of Capstone 2. So I was a little overwhelmed on, other people knew what their approach was going in, or, their mentor told them to do this, so they're doing it. So I felt a little overwhelmed because I didn't know what my approach was going to be. Because in PEP, it wasn't as essential because it felt like I had more time in those exams, or I could make up time easier. So
Yeah.
I didn't feel as pressured to really nail down a strategy, whereas in the CFE, you don't have extra time. So I kind of played it by ear and tried out some different things. But I found on day 1 and 2, I did my outline on the computer, and I did my outline
Okay.
it was really fleshed out. Like it had the full AO on it, and it had like a lot of points that linked back to the analysis underneath it, so that it was kind of ready to roll, so that when I was actually writing my response, I was just typing in, fleshing out the details, done. But on day 3, I didn't outline on the computer because I didn't have enough time, I felt like. So instead, what I would do is I would just, on a piece of paper, I would just write down how many AOs there were and kind of the highlight of them, like FR, assurance, weakness identification recommendation, or whatever the case is, weakness implication recommendation. So I would just kind of do the highlights and then do how much time I had for each one, because it was such a short case that I didn't feel like I needed to, flesh out, type out, or give a recommendation on blah, 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 because you already knew it because it was so quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So I didn't outline day 3. So it depends on what works for you. I could remember all of them, and I found that I was just kind of wasting time almost as I was outlining, because I could have just been working on the answer. But on day 2, I really needed to outline, because after like 3.5 hours, it's a lot of typing and it's a lot of thinking, and you're starting to get tired. So I found it really beneficial that in that first hour, I had already fleshed out, AO number 8, so that at least when I'm typing it out, I kind of already have a benchmark to go on, and then I just need to flesh in the details and, provide the recommendation or whatever the case is.
I totally agree with you. You just don't have the time to do it in day 3. And sometimes there's not even a point, because the requirements are kind of a little bit obvious in day 3. They just jump out at you. So just like
Exactly.
select them as they come, right?
Yeah,
So
and there's only going to be, 4 to 6. So, I mean, it's not as like day 2, there's, I can't remember what was on the actual CFE, but I know in some of the prep ones there was like 14 or 15 of them.
Yep.
So you're not going to remember what 12 is versus 14 in hour 4 when you're exhausted. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you had a mentor assigned to you. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And if you had just one mentor, and if you had like a study partner that you
yeah.
study with, so what was that like?
Yeah, I had a mentor. I selected the mentor, but it was all provided like through the firm. So I really valued having a mentor. And then we didn't live in the same location, but we chatted on the phone once a week kind of thing, just to talk about how the week was and things like that. So it was just really nice having a mentor, because they've been through the process, so they know kind of what to say to you, and they know what you're going through and things like that. And my mentor had just wrote within the last couple of years, so she remembered the practice cases as well. So
Yeah.
when I said to her, oh, I just did this case, she said, oh, I remember that case. That one was terrible. So that was really nice, because they knew kind of exactly what I was going through. So I really enjoyed that. I did not have a study partner. I did everything independently at home. I did that the whole way through university and through CPA PEP. So for me, that worked totally fine, and that was my preference, just because I didn't want to feel like I was comparing my performance to someone else's, and I didn't want to feel like, I was holding someone else back because I wanted to study this more, or vice versa, because I kind of heard leading up to it that sometimes there can be, someone doesn't want to study day 1, for example, and then other people, in the group do, and, so I felt it was easier just if I did it on my own. But the mentor was awesome. It was so important to me, because they helped me stay grounded and continually remind me that perfection is not the expectation. And that was so important.
If there's one single best advice you would give to future CFE writers, what would that advice be?
My advice would be just to stay calm and relaxed during the whole process, because I can totally see, and without my mentor, I know I would have spiraled into a super stressed out, high strung state during that whole 8 weeks. And that is not what you need to do prepping for it. Kind of like how you said before, you like where you peak, you really want to peak at the end of the 8 weeks. So if you're high strung, if you're studying all night kind of thing in week 2, you're not going to make it to week 8. So I really think that, and for me, that was really hard because I'm used to, like in university, kind of, study all night, like, try to get the perfect answers and things like that. And so it was a really different study approach for me, but it was so essential because I could have never maintained like a full day night study pattern for 8 weeks. It would have, like, the day of the exam, I would have been totally burnt out.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool. And let's go a little bit into more technical side of things. We spoke a little bit about case outlining and how you do